What is up, everybody? Welcome to my review of The Pope's Exorcist, the third of 3 films that I watched this previous Thursday night, my first triple feature ever. And this is one of the films that I did not have a whole lot of hope for in this little trilogy of experiences, because if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you've probably heard me say that I'm not the biggest fan of exorcism or demon possession type movies. There's certainly some standouts. There's certainly some of the movies that people would call best of horror that belong in that subgenre, but for the most part, most of the films that I have seen regarding exorcisms and demon possessions and all of that have been very redundant, have been very samey, have been riddled with tropes, and aside from an intriguing casting of Russell Crowe, my best assumption was that I was going to have a pretty similar experience with The Pope's Exorcist. So does The Pope's Exorcist actually find a way to stand out amongst the very redundant subgenre, or is it just another one of those films? Starting right off with the positives, Russell Crowe is, not very shockingly, the best part of this movie. I mean, Russell Crowe is one of the best actors of all time. I could have looked at the poster and not seen the movie and wrote my review from my truck saying that Russell Crowe is the standout, and I would have been bang on. He's a damn good actor. He brings a lot of really interesting flavor to this character and to movies like this, because his character has a lot more of a fun side to him than you would expect. You think of like the priest that's going to be performing The Exorcist, they're usually very dark and stoic and serious, and there's aspects of that to his character. But there's also like this fun, jovial side to him where he's cracking jokes and he's having fun with people. He has these little moments that are like borderline one-liners. He just got done vanquishing a demon back to hell and then realizes he's got a little sip of whiskey still left in his flask. You're like, oh, perfecto. And he's a good enough actor where he can pull off all those different layers and different tones within his character in a movie like that, because he's good at pulling off the fun, jovial side. He's good at having charisma. He's good at having this personality that brings a little bit of liveliness to typically a very dark and dour type of film. And yet, when shit hits the fan and things gotta get serious, he can also pull off that side very well. So if you're a Russell Crowe fan and you like most Exorcist films, I think you'll actually be surprised at what he brings to this subgenre. And luckily, the film itself takes a few chances in that regard, because the tone of this movie is refreshingly unique for an Exorcist film. It has a lot more fun with its concept. It has a lot more, a bit of a campy edge to it. Even the soundtrack, the 80s soundtrack that it puts in there, just kind of sets you up for the type of movie that you're about to experience, which, as I just said, is typically very one note, very dark, very dour, very biblical, very just end of the world type shit, and not a whole lot of variety within that. And so for somebody that typically the biggest criticism I have of these films is that they all feel and they all sound and they all look the same, this one actually does a pretty decent job at feeling different. I also want to give some props to Alexandra Esso, who plays the mother of the child who is being possessed during the majority of the film. She was somebody who was in Starry Eyes, a pretty interesting little independent horror film you should check out. She also took over the Shelley Duvall role in Dr. Sleep and did a phenomenal job at replicating Shelley Duvall's mannerisms. So she's always been an actress that's kind of quietly shown up in things, but always had my attention. And aside from Russell Crowe, she's the standout performer here. As a mother that is worried and just very shocked constantly at the things going on with her child, she pulls it off very well. And finally, I enjoyed the fact that the approach to Russell Crowe's character being sent off to perform this exorcism, as well as the slow reveals of the demonic entity's motivations and plan, kind of has a bit of like a action spy film vibe to it, to where you have the Pope, who's kind of like the leader of this secret organization that is taking on demons. Is like, all right, we got this mission that we need you to go. There's this kid that's getting fucked up in Rome. I need you to get your ass to Rome, and this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. And then the demonic entity, which, you know, most of the time the motivations of said entities are always pretty similar, especially when they take over children, you know, the whole corruption of innocence and all of that. Slowly throughout the second and third acts of the film, you get little reveals about this big master plan that this demon is doing for the sake of Satan and hell, and even that has this very subtle, like, mustache twirling Bond villain thing where it's like, haha, I tricked you, Russell Crowe, now here's what's actually going on. And as ridiculous as that sounds, the movie makes it work. And again, those are all just the elements that I appreciated because they're so unique for something like this. And now moving on to the negatives. As much as I can give this movie credit for doing things differently, it also gets completely bogged down in tropes and cliches and sameness to where it's not a movie that I can necessarily overwhelmingly recommend. I can recommend it to those that are like me, that are just kind of burnt out on that subgenre and would appreciate a little bit of a different flavor, but this is not the type of film where it really breaks through the mold and sets this new tone or sets this new standard or even creates a subgenre within the subgenre to where it's like, oh shit, exorcism movies can be this now? Cool, so many opportunities. No, not really. It's still an exorcism movie. Still the same shit for the most part that you know is going to happen, that you know you're going to see, the same visuals of people being possessed and walking on all fours and crawling up the walls and scratches appearing on a kid's face and on their body, and the more that the demonic entity takes over their soul, the more like demonic that their face looks. The dialogue that demons give out are just profanity-fueled, sexual-fueled dialogue, and it's like, okay, we've been doing this shit ever since William Friedkin's The Exorcist. Can we find just a little bit more unique? You did a good job, Pope's Exorcist, but you didn't completely stick the landing. Also, a whole lot of CG in this, and if you've seen my review for Renfield, sometimes that can work out. This is not one of those times. You know, the face extending down and doing that whole like Arnold Vosloo mummy look from 1999, and it actually doesn't look any better than it did in 1999. Things where a bunch of blood and just black bile and fire and all that you can tell most of it is fake. I mean, horror and digital shit just doesn't work most of the time. When you can tell that you're looking at a video game graphic, you don't have that tension, you don't have that scare factor, you don't have that worry for the fate of these characters. And with that being said, the movie's not scary at all, which, take that with a boulder of salt. I'm somebody that I can probably count on 3 fingers how many movies in 33 years have genuinely scared me and unnerved me, but this is not a movie that I could see anybody, teenagers, older people, people that don't like horror movies, walking into and going, oh my god, that scared the fuck out of me. All of the intended scares, the jump scares, the little surprises and twists and turns, the creepy visuals, you've seen them 100 times. So if you're shocked and surprised at some of the things that happen in this film, I'm gonna guess this is one of the first 3 exorcism movies you've ever seen. So all in all, guys, I had a decent enough time with this one. This was enjoyable enough. Maybe watching Nefarious first helped this movie's case, but there was some pretty unique, interesting flavors here that I have not seen in an Exorcist movie that I actually appreciated quite a bit. Unfortunately, there was just as many, if not more, tropes and cliches that I'm kind of sick of seeing. So if you're somebody that loves this subgenre, check it out one afternoon when it drops on VOD. You'll be pretty satisfied with it. No need to rush out to the theater, no need to dump a bunch of money, take the whole family out, you know, make a small loan to pay for all of that. It's just a decent, solid, passable experience. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2023 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my review for Renfield up here, a really good movie that I saw this weekend. Please like and share and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.